Welcome to the K-State Insiders, your Kansas State sports show. Now, let's head into the studio.
Welcome in here to the K-State Insiders. It's been a busy week. It's been a busy couple days with Kansas State football. Collin Klein is making moves officially now to his coaching staff. I am Ryan Gilbert. I'll be hosting with you today. Tim Fitzgerald, Cole Carmody, and our guest, former K-State star, Monte Spiller, hops on the Insiders with us. We've got a fun outline for everybody. For those that don't know, Fitz is lazy. He doesn't like to plan stuff. He wings it when he hosts, but me and Cole were texting. We've got a nice show planned for you. We'll talk about these new coaches that have been brought on. Kansas State has a number of players transferring out. Why is that happening? Is it money? Is it finances? We'll break down all that stuff. And then Gilbert's favorite, basketball, towards the end. Boss man, Fitz, I appreciate you letting me host, man. I feel more important than you now.
You are.
Thank you.
I just want you to know that your paycheck's on the way so you can get a new light for your bedroom.
Thank you. I hope this doesn't look too dark. Yeah, before we went on, my real light, not these studio lights, but the real light for my bedroom went out. So we're making it work. But on Sunday, it was Jordan Peterson, Christian Ellsworth made official, Fitz. And then today, Monday, Nick Toth and Marcus Woodson officially brought on as well. So that's 4 here in the last 24 hours, Fitz. It's exciting stuff.
Yeah, it is. I wonder if that's going to be the complete defensive staff, or if they've got a defensive line coach and Buddy Wyatt, and Toth is linebackers, and then 2 defensive backs coach. I wonder if he's going to roll with 4 on that side of the ball, and you've got to account for your special teams coordinator if he's going to be on the field. So that would make sense to me. But I think it's interesting, though, that it's the offensive side of the ball that is sluggish. It's the coach's, favorite side of the ball, basically. The defensive side's come together, but the offense side's still waiting on a few things. And, we've talked about names quite a bit. Cole has on Go Power Cat, but it's going to unveil itself probably, in the new year. I think we're done for this week. Unless Santa's going to sign on as offensive line coach. Oh, that makes a lot of sense.
I don't think anything's come as a surprise to you, Cole, because you've been on top of everything, sharing your latest rumblings on the hot boards that you've put out. I think those might be coming to an end now that things are a lot more solidified, Cole, but nothing here really surprised you. But timing wise, is everything kind of working out the way that Collin Klein wants it to?
Yeah, I think so. I think the defensive side of things was always the most important because obviously Collin Klein he's going to have his hands all over this offense. And so getting the guys in place who he wanted for defense, I think before Christmas was really important. I really wasn't anticipating that. And I'm sure if you ask Collin, he would tell you that he would love for Jordan Peterson not to have been named, because that means that he's still worrying about Texas A&M in the playoff. Now, for K-State, it's probably a good thing, and we've talked about that. But I think that getting those defensive guys in place is really good. And I know you're going to bring Monty into this, Ryan, but I'm going to fire this question at him. When you watch that Texas A&M defense play on Saturday, and now you realize that you're going to get one of the masterminds of that Texas A&M defense. I don't know about you guys, and I'll throw it to Monty, but when I watch that defense play, that's really exciting stuff to realize you're getting one of the heads of those snakes.
Yeah, absolutely. Watching the game, it was a defensive battle. Normally, most people would watch that game and be like, come on, let's score some points. But for me, I loved it on both sides of the ball. But more so for A&M, understanding the type of ball that they potentially play and the type of coaching that we are getting with our new DC. And you're absolutely correct. And it also made me wonder what kind of guys are we going to go out and recruit and get in the portal to fill those roles to play that style of football, because obviously you can do the X's and O's all you want, but if you ain't got the dudes to make it happen, it don't matter. So I think I'm excited to see who we go get. And like Ryan alluded to about a lot of things going on with the guys jumping in the transfer portal and whatnot. But on the flip side, we have guys leaving, unfortunately, but also other schools have guys leaving also. And I can guarantee our coaching staff, our new coaching staff sees that and have certain guys targeted to bring in K-State. And it makes you wonder, I had friends and coworkers ask me, with Klanderman leaving for Baylor, how many of our guys go to Baylor? And I'm like, I don't know. And we can ask the same question. Not saying that we shouldn't sell ourselves short, us being K-State. How many guys that may not have started at A&M might say, hey, I can go to K-State and potentially start. So who's to say that they don't bring those kind of guys in? But yeah, I'm excited about the style of play they play. They play fast, they play confident, and they play physical. So I'm looking forward to seeing what happens in the very near future.
And I will say, I'm going to throw this out there. There's been one Texas A&M player to jump in the transfer portal or announce that he's going to enter the transfer portal. Just so happens to be a linebacker. So just saying, keep that in mind. But you're right, Monty. I think you're exactly right.
Cole's going to be all over that. I know you talked about that on Wabash. Players that leave Texas A&M, there's going to be no shortage of connections there with those players. Real quick, if you want to get your thoughts up here on the screen, our super chats are wide open. Monty, you did talk about the A&M Miami game. Fitz, I understand you had a very, very, very busy Saturday watching A&M in Miami. Were you pleased to see A&M lose? You know, you don't want Collin Klein to lose, but now it's business for Collin Klein here in Manhattan.
Well, I kind of feel like it was a no-loss situation for Kansas State fans. Either he advances and is on the national stage, or he's done and he comes to Manhattan. I don't care how many points they scored. It's not Kansas State's offense. So I think this has helped. We now have a defensive staff in place and more to come. There's plenty of more spots on this, lineup of coaches that need to be filled. But yeah, I actually watched the game versus the Sky Cam thing. Where it's all ambient sound. The whole game I watched. I didn't hear the announcer say one word. It was glorious, but it was a little disjointed. It's a little weird looking at it from like right above like that. It's that's not a view you get in person ever. But it was an incredibly boring game. It was
only if you don't like defense, like Monty said.
I'm going to just say this. Yeah. The defenses were good. The offenses were absolutely awful.
And the special teams. The kickers were horrible. Let's not forget that.
Oh, good.
Not like they were playing up north in the snow or anything. College Station's not too bad this time of year here.
Yeah, just missing field goals. It was not great, but hey, Kansas State has a football coach in place, has a defensive coordinator in place, a quarterback's coach in place because of that loss. I will take it. Because it kind of just settles the waters a little bit. People are a little worried about the transfer portal, which I'm sure we'll get into, but there's just a lot of things moving around college football right now.
Yeah, Cole, we'll get to roster and those sorts of things later on, but coaching-wise, what do you think is next? Paces are coming together on this staff, but it's not solidified yet.
Yeah, I mean, I think offensively, it's kind of in flux still, right? Like you're going to have targets that you want to go get. But a lot of that is going to be, what they coach is dependent upon the other guy, right? Like, I don't think it's any secret that they want to keep Brian LePack on this staff, but what's he going to coach? Is he going to coach tight ends or is he going to coach offensive line, right? Like if they come out and say Brian LePack is now the tight ends coach, I think that gives you a pretty good indication that your offensive line coach is going to be your offensive coordinator, right? Well, okay, there's that. If they come out and say Brian LePack is offensive line coach, then that means that you're probably looking for, a straight up offensive coordinator, or you're looking for a younger guy to coach tight ends. I think that the fact that they named Christian Ellsworth as quarterbacks coach is probably a good thing. If you are, team, go find an offensive line coach who is going to be an offensive coordinator. That's probably good news on that front, because that means that Brian LePack can then go back to tight ends. And Fitz, we've talked about this too. I think that they're, either way, you could see some sort of a co-offensive coordinator role for Brian LePack. I think that's probably a good idea. But the two spots where I think we're still a little foggy at are wide receiver and running backs coach. And so, we'll kind of see where that goes. But I would look for that offensive staff really starting to be tightened down. And keep in mind, there will be more additions to the staff that, aren't put out there in such a major, announcement. Some support roles that I would anticipate over the next few days as well. But I really do believe the goal would be to try and get everything wrapped up by January 2nd when the portal opens.
Monty, on Monday, Austin Romaine, we learned he was going to be entering the portal. That's very disappointing just in terms of his talent and his upside. We'll get to maybe why right? We've had a lot of discussions on Wabash and stuff about the money or the lack of money right now for Kansas State, but Austin Romaine losing a player like that stings.
Yeah, I talked about it earlier too with mutual friends of mine, and it was kind of a surprise, him being a leader that he is and he was for K-State. And keep in mind, just because you enter the portal doesn't mean you will leave. And people forget, a lot of these kids have parents in their ear, agents in their ear, and I can't blame the kid. I don't know the situation with him because I've heard nothing but good things about him, and personally know nothing bad about him. But a lot of these times, if I'm an agent, if I'm a parent, say, hey, you know what, coaching change right now. I'm not saying that it's not going to be a good coaching staff, but let's test the waters. And I can guarantee there are other schools out there that are looking at Big 12, ACC, Big 10 schools that has coaching changes and say, hey, let's see what kids they have available and potentially reach out to them and see if we can learn them that way. And that could be happening. Who's to say that he wasn't contacted and say, you know what, I know you're a dude, K-State, but new coaching staff, jump in the portal and see what we can offer you. And then who knows, he may come back, he may not, but that one did kind of surprise me. But there's so much going on behind the scenes. You really don't know what to think of it. And I hate to pass judgment off of something based on thinking if it's just more money or whatnot, because, more money could be a good thing, but you could present yourself up to go to a team that may not be as successful as you could be here at K-State. But I get it. It's easier said than done. I'm not in his position, so I'm not going to throw stones, but I'd be curious to see what comes of that if he ends up somewhere else.
Austin Romaine, he put a lot on tape for teams to like. So if it is to become a bidding war, good luck if you're Kansas State. Now, somebody like Ryan Davis maybe hadn't put a whole lot on the field. The CJ Jones situation, guys, that might be coming a little bit more common where a guy enters the portal and does decide to come back, Fitz.
Gills, what's going on here in many cases, every case is a little bit different, certainly, but you have these agents out there, these shady folks who have no credentials to do what they're doing. In many cases, some of them are very qualified, but they're telling these kids, I can get you this, I can get you that. You got to get in the portal so I can get you. And they're just trying to get them in the portal because it's kind of like getting them out the door. They don't make money if they come back to K-State. They're only going to make money if they find them a new school. They're these agents that are trying to steal clients and making all kinds of promises. So I think what we're seeing a lot of student athletes do is they're going to go in the portal. And it makes a lot of sense because then you can take the offers. Oh, you think I'm worth $1 million? Okay, I'm in the portal. On January 2nd, I want to see my $1 million offers. And I believe the new K-State coaches are saying, hey, dude, if you can get $1 million, you got to go.
Go for it. Yeah.
Yeah, go for it. Go do that. We're going to focus on players that want to be here and not chase the money. I do believe some of these guys will come back around. I think they'll get in the market and realize, okay, let's be honest. Austin Romaine's been a very good linebacker. Nobody in the SEC is going to look at him as someone they want to add to their roster for $1 million. At least I might take that back. They might want him as a backup at $1 million in the SEC. And that's another problem schools like K-State are facing now is you're actually seeing players that are worth more to backups to these schools that have a surplus of money than what you can pay a starter be. So it's an ongoing issue, but don't panic. They're not even in the portal. The portal doesn't open until January 2nd.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they can't commit to anything right now. Anyhow, they might have they might have a school. I mean, schools are tampering too. Maybe a school has already offered $10 trillion and a new pair of socks.
Wow.
And the Sox got it over the line. So maybe they have sent something up, but for the most part, these kids are just testing the market, which is actually pretty advisable in any way. If you're going to negotiate a contract, make sure you're negotiating with more than one person.
And I think it's worth pointing out, guys, Donovan McIntosh was one of these guys who was reported, agents told people he's going into the transfer portal. And then last night after Jordan Peterson's hired, he sends out a tweet that says, let's work. And that's Jordan Peterson on Twitter, right? So just because there had been reports about guys going into the transfer portal, again, it doesn't open until January 2nd. And if this would be, a Chris Kleiman staff where there's been continuity and people are staying over time, yeah, I think those reports of kids entering the portal, those are probably going to come to fruition. Like that would happen. But because you have so much turnover, like I do think there's that either, oh crap, we need to talk to this kid and make sure that doesn't happen, or oh, they actually hired a coach who I kind of like. I think I'm gonna stay, right? So you're right. You guys are 100% right. I am not taking any of these portal entries as gospel until their name actually appears. And you know what? We have a long time until January 2nd to get some of this stuff ironed out, because I do believe that this staff is working overtime to try and get this fixed and figured out.
Yeah.
Even if that name does appear, though, Cole, it's still not the end of the world. You're leaving, all options are still on the table, even if you're in the portal. But Cole, I want to ask you more about the money. How much or how little of an impact is this right now? And is it going to be the financials of grabbing guys and keeping guys in the portal?
Yeah, I mean, I think money is really big. It's super important if you want your program to be successful. I don't think anybody's doubting that. And I don't believe that Collin Klein would have taken this job if Gene Taylor would have told him, hey, sorry, we don't have any money, or hey, sorry, we don't have the resources to compete. That was one of the first questions that was asked of him. Do you have the resources here? And he said, yeah, like we are getting those resources. But the word that I want to make sure people understand is getting. Right. It's not all there right now. And some of the numbers that we've heard floated out there are substantially bigger than what K-State operated with this year. But once again, just because that number's been floated out there and just because the coaching staff is under the assumption that they're going to have that number is not necessarily in their possession right now. Right, so exactly. I think that's kind of the key distinction that I want folks to understand. And Fitz, you're going to talk about this as well. But that number is what they expect to have. But until they actually have that, they can't go out and offer the Austin Romaines, as Fitz said, $1 million if you don't have that in your possession at this exact time at 7:17 on Monday night.
Central time.
Yes.
Time.
So there's two different piles of money. There's the rev share at $20.5 million. Football gets a big chunk of that, basically 75%. Men's basketball gets another big chunk of it. And then there's the separate NIL pile that is supposed to be actual deals, not just money. That's one thing that K-State is trying to adhere to is it's not just handing out the cash, at doing actual deals. But Monty is probably experienced with this, pledging like $5 million. Money's got to shift around a lot of assets to get the $5 million liquid to donate. He's sitting on a pile of money, but it's all like investments. He owns a chain of car washes, which is a great way to launder money, but that's a whole different topic. I don't want to get into that with Monty right now. But yeah, there's been promises made, the money's coming, but the money in there. And until it's there, you're going to be a little cautious with the promises you make. At least some programs would.
Yeah. Nope. Billionaires don't have like any income tax, right? Because it's all
they just move it around. Yeah,
that's what K-State donors are doing right now.
And can I also say that like that is a major reason why you see the Jace Browns, why you see the Austin Romaines. Like there's no doubt in my mind, Austin Romaine loves K-State. You don't go and play in a football game with a gigantic club on your hand and then go tell your coach, I want to keep playing, only for your coach to say, actually, it's probably a good idea if you shut it down and get ready for next season if you don't plan on coming back to K-State. But if you don't feel like that you coming back to K-State is worth your value, right? Like there's something to be said for that. And so you have to hope, if you're a K-State fan, that money comes to fruition sooner rather than later. And let's just be honest, guys. Remember back, and I'm going to use a K-State basketball comparison here. K-State basketball had a ton of money at the end of the summer. And what did they have enough money to do? They had enough money to go out and sign PJ Haggerty. The year before, same situation with Coleman Hawkins. The year before with Arthur Kaluma, right? So like these big NIL guys, they get this money that comes in late. Well, I'm not saying that the money is going to come in late for K-State football, but if it does, that doesn't mean that you won't be able to either get a guy like Austin Romaine or an Austin Romaine to stay, because that for a better lack of a phrase, that check finally hits.
Yeah.
If you remember back to Jerome Tang's first offseason, it was patience. And obviously Keontae was the late guy. And I think to a fault, maybe the staff got a little too patient moving forward in the coming off seasons. But there's that first initial wave of guys, and this is true for every sport, but maybe guys are, programs are going to pay a little too much for those guys just because you want to get your hands on something. If you sit back and wait, there's pros and cons, but there's still going to be guys at the beginning, at the end, in the middle. It's always going to be there. But if you're getting into a bidding war for a player and you don't have the money, it's going to be game over. But Monte, if you're Collin Klein and that staff and you had to pitch to somebody, not just financially about the money, why should you come to Kansas State? Why should you want to play here?
Man, we have history at K-State, and we push the family model, and which is good also. But like in today's world, family does mean something, but money means more in a lot of situations. And honestly, if I'm Coach Klein, pros and cons. He came from K-State. He was a K-State guy. He came from K-State. He saw how things operated here prior to him departing for A&M. He's had 2 or 3 years at A&M and an SEC school, understands what it takes to get that type of support. Obviously, A&M has a lot more money than K-State. It is what it is. This is the nature of the beast. But if I'm Coach Klein, I'm looking at a situation, and a lot of people don't think about this. If you look at Indiana traditionally has not been a football power. They're a basketball school. But in the last 2 to 3 years, the culture that Coach Cignetti has built there speaks volumes. And some people say it can't be done, and he has proven it can be done. He has a Heisman winner, #1 ranked right now, and won the Big Ten. And that says a lot. And like I say, IU is not a traditional football power. I think Coach Klein and his staff needs to take that type of approach. Now, how he sells young people, I don't know. But if you win and if you can get others on board, others will come. And people want to be part of something special. If you're looking back at years past, Coach Snyder started with nothing. But he said you can be part of something special. And guys bought in. It put a little work in there to get there. But when that happened, we had people wanting to come here. And Indiana is a prime example. And I think Coach Klein should use that model to a certain extent to kind of move forward, especially with today's NIL situation.
Can we have a good question in the chat? Can I bring this up?
Yeah, go for it, man.
So this is a good question from Nick. I don't really know the answer to the question. What happened to the Wildcat NIL money absorbed in our athletics department, but is it used for rev share or in-house NIL over the rev share? That's probably a question more so catered to you, Fitz. But this is a good question. I have to imagine this goes to the rev share, right? That
I
seems
imagine it would.
Yeah.
I mean, I know it's two different things and purposes, but it's just one pile of money. It always cracks me up when people say, I donated $5 million, but I'm not letting them use it for this. Okay, but will they use other money for that, and then they replace it with your $5 million? So it's just all one pile of money. It's just $20.5 million will be designated as the rev share, and then the rest will come in the form of some type of endorsement deal. So if anyone out there wants to offer $250,000 to NIL, and hypothetically, you don't actually have a business to promote for the name, image, and likeness portion of this, I volunteer Go PowerCat to be the business that goes on that donation. You're welcome. I'm a very generous person taking advantage of your money or making it easier for you to give.
Gilbert, I'm going to bring up a question here because I think this is worth talking about.
He's going now.
This is something I've been thinking about. Trey Scott's coming from the NFL, the GM's coming from the NFL landscape. How many times do we hear in contract negotiations in the NFL are incredibly hostile? Like, guys will not play in the NFL because they hold out on $2 million, right? Like, that's the background he's coming from. I wonder in today's age of college football, if you can't be, for a better lack of a term, as much of a hard ass. Like, I really wonder if you kind of have to be a little bit more catering, a little bit more lenient. Now, I'm not saying that that's what's going on with Trey Scott because I'm not privy to that information. But I wonder if the negotiations are looking a little bit different than he probably or maybe anticipated. And I guess there's really no good way to go about that. But I'm just interested if maybe we'll start to see a change in style midway through this roster retention leading up to the transfer portal, because it is very different than even it was 365 days ago.
And even this NFL aspect, I pitched it to Monty about the pitch for coming to Kansas State. Well, something you can sell a player on is, hey, let's get you ready for the NFL, right? Let's get you ready for the next level. And I know that Trey Scott maybe wasn't as exactly hands-on as other coaches, but some background there, even if you don't have the background, saying, hey, like, I don't care what's going on right now here in college. Let's get you ready for the NFL. And then you can make your hundreds of millions of dollars at the next level. Tough sell, but if you can't get a guy to come to Manhattan in that quote unquote bidding war saying, hey, let's get you prepped for the next level, so then you can make your money. Also another avenue you can take.
Cole, I think maybe Trey Scott's background in the NFL, he's been an agency the last 2 years, but still dealing with the NFL because he's dealing with coaches, is okay. Go see what you're worth on the market.
Right.
Just go. I'm not, there's no reason to talk about this. You think you're worth it? I don't. Let's find out. And then the market kind of establishes it. Then once you know the number that's out there, do we want them at that number?
Yes. Yeah.
Do I feel like we can do something else with that number that's more effective?
Yeah. No, I agree with you, Fitz, on that too. And me being a former player and kind of a lover of the game, you look at it, and I'm curious to see how the coaching staff will approach that. You alluded to it earlier, Fitz, with Austin Romaine, about how some SEC schools or bigger schools will look at him as a potential backup, because he's a good player. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah, he's very good.
But he's not an All-American. And how many systems would he fit? How many schools will look at him and be like, he's the guy we want to plug in the middle. He makes the defense go. I couldn't tell you how many. I'm not thinking that's a whole lot, especially with today's dynamics of college football. And I wanted K-State, and you talked about the amount of money that we potentially can have. And I know Cole and I talked about it before in the past. Now you have to go out and find kids. How much money do you offer them to be potential backups to rotate in? And how do you pitch that? Say, listen, you might not be a starter, but we can pay you this amount of money to come off the bench, stay fresh, get some good film, and like you talked about, potentially get some looks in the NFL or at an NFL camp. Yeah, you might not have been a starter, but when you're on the field, you're fresh, you flash, you put good film out there, you get your opportunity. And my question is, how do we sell young people on that? Because a lot of times the better players have those big egos and they don't want to come off the bench, which I get that. Everybody who competes don't want to, but my outlook is, how do you sell young people on that? Say, listen, we got a guy here, but we need another guy here, and y'all can compete. And then however it pans out, it pans out. But money, as you talked about, we got to look at it, not just for the starters, for the backup as well, because depth plays a pivotal role in the long season.
Monty, you know this better than anybody. Kids don't really want to compete with one another nowadays. Like that is just the hard truth. Like, it's true, a majority of kids from the high school level to the college level, that's just kind of the way that it is, right? Like, I hate to be that old guy and say, kids don't want it as bad anymore. But time after time, we see it, right? Like, yep. Oh, I have to compete for this spot. Well, let me go somewhere where it's going to be handed to me. It happens in high school. Kids transfer in high school for that. Kids transfer in college for that. Right? Like, that's just kind of the way of college athletics right now. So if I'm answering your question, Monty, it's that, how do you pitch that? Well, you got to find the guys who are all about the team, right? Like, they have to be the guys to want to be there to do what it takes to win football games. And, that's going to upset some fans, right? Like, oh, well, we're losing, as a fan might say, we're losing a 5-star transfer in Austin Romaine, and we're bringing in a 3-star transfer and some guy from No Name State. But 2 guys from No Name State maybe equal 1 guy from who's Austin Romaine, right? And so there's multiple ways of looking at it. But yeah, I think that you have to find the guys who want to try and help your team win. I'm not bashing Austin Romaine because I think he's one of those guys. I'm not blaming him for this, but the point is, you have to go out and get guys who are all about team. Now, how many of those guys actually exist? That's another conversation for another day.
Yeah, and that's why That's why Chris Kleiman was so frustrated with the roster cuts, is those players that he had to let go at that time. Those walk-ons, the guy with the chip on their shoulder that love Kansas State, that are happy to play special teams and have a role as a gunner, what have you. That's part of the problem, to back up your point, Cole, is you had to get rid of those guys. You had them, now they're gone.
Yep.
It's going to be interesting to see how the value actually plays out. See, my great fear, and I wrote about this at Go Powercat, is that the money will get so out of sort that you won't be able to keep key players because they can make more money and play less, have less wear and tear. It comes down to now, do the kids just want to play or they want to get paid? I honestly think this generation leans more towards the paid, which is unfortunate, but there's a lot of players. Everything going on at K-State's going on in other places. And it's just kind of that stupid shuffle of talent around college sports now. You basically put one guy into the portal and get a player very similar to him right back out. The guy that went into the portal might as well go to his team. I mean, it's crazy how this is taking place. And we have now done 30 minutes of a college sports podcast talking about pay. It's insanity. It's where we're at, and it's not sustainable. Everyone knows it's not sustainable. But we're going to head down that road anyhow. We know there's a cliff at the end of the road, but we're still going to go as fast as we can down this road. That's exactly what's happening in college sports now. And honestly, the SEC and Big Ten just feel like they're better equipped to survive the fall. And because it's going to crash at some point.
I've been one to say, probably ever since I started with you, Fitz, probably before, one of my go-to sayings is hard work beats talent when talent doesn't work hard. And I'm not going to run away from that now, but Texas Tech, take that for example. This year in the offseason, some of Texas Tech's players just didn't have to train as hard as a K-State guy might have to. And they're just so much more talented that even when K-State plays I don't want to say a perfect game, but was in it up until the last couple of minutes and still loses by 2-3 scores. It's telling of, if you can go grab talent, that's almost supreme over anything else now in college football, sadly, but truthfully.
No, I agree with you on that too. And Tech is one of those teams this year. Obviously, I'm a little bit biased being Big 12, but I've watched a lot of their games, and that's what I'm pulling for moving forward. But they have a plethora of talent. But if you look at their most notable players, i.e. Rodriguez, he is an old school guy. He's talented. He plays hard. He plays physical, and he's a leader. And those guys go as he goes on the defense side of the ball. And a lot of guys, they take pride in it. So you're correct. Like, you can get talented guys, but less talented guys can outwork talented guys. But when you get talented guys like a Rodriguez, who works just as hard as the less talented guys, they're hard to beat. And that's the kind of guys K-State needs. We need a bunch of Rodriguez's. Not saying they're going to get that talent level, but mentality as far as that's the hard part. But you're correct. It's one of those things where, and Tim talked about it, Fitz talked about it, money-wise, it's sad, and we are heading to a cliff. And the big schools, SEC, the Big Ten, they feel untouchable, but they're going to be affected by it too. And they got to understand, the SEC has the backing of ESPN, ABC, whatnot, but they got to understand college football is bigger than them. They think they are bigger than college football, but college football is bigger than them. And you get to a point where so many people are going to get fed up with what's going on. Change is going to have to happen. So I don't know what the answer is. Obviously, it needs to be fixed. But I used to love college. I still love college football, but it's tough watching games and having an announcer going, starting quarterback started here at state school here and spent a year here, and now at his third school starting here. I'm just kind of like, come on, man, what's happening?
Yeah, I agree with you guys on that. And I think we're going to get to a point with K-State specifically this offseason where these coaches know exactly the kind of players that they want, right? And obviously losing a guy like we've been talking about in Austin Romaine, you could probably throw in Jace Brown. Like, those are really talented football players that I do believe every single coach on this staff would want on this team. But some other guys you're going to see into the transfer portal, you're like, oh, that really sucks. But I think that this staff has an idea of the kind of player that they want.
Right.
And so if that kind of player doesn't exist on the roster, they're going to go get that person, and somebody's going to have to see the door. So I am not judging anything that's going on, and I encourage fans not to, until you see what the spring roster is, and quite honestly, even the roster for the fall, because there's so much time. And as our old coworker Ryan Wallace tweeted it out, December is doom and gloom December, because everybody's leaving and nobody's coming in. Well, in January, that's going to change. And so I would just encourage fans to just wait until that time.
I want to point out, though, I saw what you popped up there about hungry players. That's Austin Romaine and Quay Moss. They both were highly competitive and hungry for achievement and helping the team. And I just think we're in a phase now where it's not about the character of the kid. It's the game that's being played. There's the football game, and there's this NIL game. And if someone tells you you're worth $1 million, your reaction is probably, okay, well, let's see if I am. It's not, nah, man, they told me I'm worth 400K. I'm going to go with that. You wouldn't do that in your life. Why would you expect a player to do that in their life? If they've been told they're worth $1 million, they probably want to find out if they are. And maybe they're not, but maybe they're worth more than what staying would pay them in terms of not just another nickel, but a substantial amount of money. So every program has its needs and is going to pick its fights with NIL money, particularly at this Kansas State level. And we'll see who they really want and will pay to keep, because that's what's going to come down to being. It's just all about money in many cases.
Guys, we talked about this on Thursday. I guess, Monte, you weren't here, so I'll let you go on this. But where do you think we are in terms of the storm? You know, before our last show, number of guys went in, and now you've got Romaine going in. Do you think there's a lot more worse to come, or is this starting to get a little more sunny out there?
I think more are going to come, and it's one of those things where we have the majority of our defensive coaches in place. So I think the kids who were waiting to see who we bring in as coaches makes a big difference. Offensive wise, we have not completed that process, so that can make a difference also, depending on who Collin brings in. As far as offensive coaching, I think some guys will be like, okay, I want to play for this coach, or maybe, this is not the guy I want to play for. That makes a difference. So it's not quite done yet. And I'm also wondering if Collin is waiting, because who's to say that he hasn't been in contact with some coaches that are still in the playoffs, assistant coaches that's in the playoffs, and he goes, hey, once the season's over, I would love to have you put this in position, but I'm not going to mess with it right now because obviously you're still alive. And that could be a good thing. Who knows who he's spoken to? So that plays a role in my mind, potentially, of what kids may jump into the portal or ones who may stay. So it's too soon to say. I don't think it's over, the storm per se, but I think it could be a positive more than a negative based off the waiting game to see what happens as the month of December expires.
Fitz, what's your current reading of Avery Johnson's situation right now?
Very vague. He's not staying. He's not going. He's just playing the game. Mm-hmm. Probably some questions about his value. I think my guess would be there's been a little shock and the value isn't where they thought it was based on performance. And maybe, you just don't know what he's worth to someone else. I watched Texas A&M play. That was a team that had an incredible season. That quarterback was awful. And it puts into context when everyone bitches about Avery Johnson, he's a pretty damn good quarterback. Is he perfect? No. Is he got some of the characteristics I'd like to see in a quarterback? Those Collin Klein, I'm going to bleed and win. I wish he had more of that. But he's a quarterback that has great value to other programs. He's an upgrade in many ways to a lot of programs. So, of course, he's going to test his market value. Again, people, you would do the same thing if you were in the position. But I think playing for Collin has value. playing at Kansas State has value for Avery Johnson. We should appreciate that. He's
Mhm.
always been loyal. But there comes a point where let's put it on the table. Let's be really honest. We all assumed he was an NFL quarterback. I don't think anyone's assuming that now. We haven't seen that kind of development. So that might actually mean, well, let's just go get whatever money we can get. And if I'm playing at UCLA and get my brains bashed in, at least I make them $4 million a year. I don't know. Just every family and player is going to be different. I don't know how they'll handle that.
Yeah, I think it's interesting, right? You look at the transfer portal market for quarterbacks right now, and if Avery Johnson, hypothetically speaking, were to announce he'd be entering the transfer portal, I think he's probably a top 6 quarterback, maybe definitely a top 8 quarterback. You still got guys like, let's not forget, Josh Hoover, Rocco Becht, Dylan Raiola, DJ Lagway. Like, these are the guys who all the schools that are looking for quarterbacks, they're going to go there. And, I think that if you are looking for a 1-year guy to come in and play, there is some serious things you have to look at with Avery, because the development has been stunted. And I'm giving him the benefit of the doubt here, because having 3 different offensive coordinators in 3 years, that would stunt anybody's development at the quarterback position, regardless if you're in the NFL, if you're in college. Well, now he's not going to have a new technically offensive coordinator if he stays, because Collin Klein's back. And so I think there's some real value in him staying. And like I've said before, like, K-State's going to take care of him. So if there's one player I'm confident they would take care of, it would be him, because of what he means to the fan base, because of what he means to the state, because of what it means to the institution. So if he leaves, I don't think it's going to be money related. I'll just say that. If he leaves, I don't think it'll be money related. Maybe I'm completely wrong because of the things we've talked about. But if there's one guy who I think they're going to try and take care of, and that's not just that's not just an Avery thing. I think that's a Collin Klein thing. I think he really likes Avery. But if there's one guy they're going to take care of, I think it would be him.
Yeah, keep in mind that I'm not trying to say.
I don't think they're going to go above what they view as the upper end of his market value.
No.
I mean, they're not going to just pay him, match any offer. They've got a whole roster to try to tend to. And I don't think Collin is going to make his program the slave to any one player.
Yeah.
And if you want to be somewhere else, if the money's that important, okay. Maybe we'll talk to Rocco Becht. Maybe Blake Barnett's our guy. Yeah. I'm just kind of at the point with this is it's a natural occurrence. There's no loyalty anymore. It's all price driven. It's all 1-year contracts, which is part of the problem. And we'll see how this whole process works out. Yeah. Might be new quarterback, middle linebacker, receiver. Okay. There's going to be players out there we're going to talk about next season. We may not know their names right now.
Yeah. Go ahead, Monty. Go ahead.
No, and talking about quarterbacks, I can't remember the kid's name, but the quarterback from Ole Miss, he came from a smaller school last year, correct? And I can't think of his name.
Trinidad Chambliss from Ferris State, D2 national champion.
Yeah, and he wasn't a big name, but if you can if a guy can play, he can play. And people don't understand, if you're coming from a smaller school, K-State is a big time landing spot for them. They might not think, most people don't think that, but if I'm playing at a Washburn and all of a sudden K-State wants me and I bought out, I'm going there, and I may take less money. When you surround that kid with better talent, he's going to show out as the quarterback from Ole Miss has done. So who's to say that couldn't happen? I'm not saying I want Avery to leave, but like Tim alluded to, I don't think Collin is going to beg a kid to stay and not going to pay out a crap ton of money and especially if you got 1 year left. And that at that point, but I think it's good to know that we want you. But if you don't want to be here, good luck in your future. Move on. But go ahead, Ryan.
Yeah, 2 things. Number one, so Collin was a wideout initially at Kansas State, right? Have we done any digging on the wideouts on this roster that might play quarterback? I'm just saying. But in all seriousness, and I don't want this to come across as a bashing of Matt Wells, but remember that Collin Klein has his own lens on things, and the way Matt Wells ran K-State's offense, the way that Avery Johnson was treated, utilized, that's not going to go hand in hand with what Collin Klein and his offense is going to want to do with Avery Johnson. So, Johnson is not off the hook for the, maybe subpar season or 2 seasons that he's had, given the potential. But Collin Klein is going to be looking at that. His staff is going to be looking at that and saying, hey, I would have done this differently. I would have done that differently.
The last thing I'll say, guys, is I think they want Avery, and I think Avery wants to be at K-State.
Agree.
And I think those are the 2 things that we haven't even really mentioned. But I think both sides want to be at K-State. It's just, how do you make sure that happens? And, with everybody leaving, does that change the equation? I don't really think that changes the equation for Avery Johnson. But again, I just want folks to understand that if he leaves, it's not going to be because both sides didn't give some sort of effort for him to finish his career at K-State. So I just want to throw that out there.
Yeah, if you wave $1 million or something in front of a young man's face, it's going to change the story, or 2, 5, 10 million. But go back and listen to Avery's post-game comments and, watch what they do, not what they say. I understand that, but go back and watch that. Go listen to his words and how and what he said, not about Kleinman, right, but about Kansas State and Manhattan. And obviously he wasn't talking about this directly, but he's been on record in speaking with his relationship with Collin Klein as well. That's one that dates back for a number of years, guys.
Yeah. I mean, Collin was working on him when he was a young kid. Playing lower level ball. The talent was obvious. The thing is Avery needs to do what's best for Avery. And everyone looks at this from Kansas State's perspective. Maybe he feels like he and the family hasn't gotten what he needs out of the college experience to prepare him for the NFL because of what Cole said. I don't know. I'm willing to give everyone time to feel out these offers and come to peace with what they're doing. Now, I've got to say this. Avery loves Kansas State. He's always been clear about that, and he's not just saying the words. He means it. He's a very level-headed young man, which ironically is why this process isn't chaotic with him. He's very systematic, methodical, going through where he's at. He knows he can't do anything until January 2nd anyhow. So, why rush that? He's got time. But that's also what gets him in trouble as a player. He doesn't show that emotion, that fire that's like, hell yeah, I'm going to get in the portal. I'm worth this money. That's not Avery. And it kind of shows up in his play too at times, which is a downside, but we'll see. We'll just see what happens, folks.
Yeah. And you guys remember back when Lincoln Cure things were dicey with Oregon, and Chris Kleiman talked about, you'd be stupid not to at least hear the other side, hear what somebody else may have to offer. Now, that's not being disloyal or dishonest to K-State or Avery Johnson or anything like that, but you'd be foolish not to at least have your ears open and, financially, scheme, whatever Avery Johnson is valuing the most, right? You'd be a fool not to at least listen to what other schools are going to have to say.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I think, honestly, when it's all said and done, Avery will be a Wildcat for his senior year. And that's my hope. And I think, Collin being the coach that he is, being the person that he is, and I think Avery wants to be able to usher in Collin's first season as his first as quarterback. And I think they can work well together. And like Tim talked about, Avery sometimes doesn't show that fire that we're used to with K-State quarterbacks. Going back to past years, K-State quarterbacks has always been those guys that show fire. And I think Coach Klein is going to rub off on Avery for all the right reasons. And also, it's an opportunity for him to grow as a man. I'm not saying that he is immature, but you can learn from a guy that's been there, done that, and found ways to win and did it the right way. Not saying that Coach Kleiman and his staff didn't do a valid job, but I feel like it's just different when you got a guy that played the position, that been there and understand what it's like to go through adversity and come out on top. So I think Avery wants to be at K-State. I think Coach Klein will be good for him. And when it's all said and done, I think it's going to be a win-win. But Coach Klein offers more than just money to Avery for his overall growth and when he leaves K-State and has that relationship with K-State and the university for life.
I remember talking to Thomas Gibson. We can start getting to basketball here, guys. This ties everything together maybe a little bit. Talking to Big Gip about when Frank got let go or left, right, Kansas State. And why did you want to stay with Bruce Weber, and what was Bruce's pitch and all this and that? And, Gibson just said, hey man, like my whole life I had ran away from every challenge that was in front of me. And I decided at that point to embrace this one, tackle it head on, and not run away from the challenge, but to run to the challenge. And so Avery Johnson, I'm not saying that's what you have to do, Avery, but man, do you want to run away from this, or do you want to run to this and continue maybe what you thought you were going to build with Klein years back, and then he leaves and now he's back, right? Full circle moment. But basketball, guys, Cole, that Creighton win in Omaha. I just did a piece on Go Power Cat about this, went up this morning. And if you haven't read it, here, let me say this. If you're going to call me crazy for saying K-State has a solid resume, go read what I wrote, right? Kansas State's now number 52 in the net. That win in Omaha is now a quadrant 1 win. I mean, Creighton was a sub 100 team in the net, and now you go beat Xavier and Marquette. Creighton now gives you a quadrant 1 win. Tulsa and Cal both have 1 loss on the season. That's both come to Kansas State. So the resume now, there's a lot of work to do in the Big 12 play, and that's ultimately what is going to matter. But Cole, right now, dude, that win in Creighton might start to pay some dividends here for the Wildcats.
Imagine if they had won that game going away like it looked like in the first half too, right? Let me back up. If they win that game going away, though, does Creighton actually come back and win those next 2 games too? Like that's also something to think about. But you're right. I mean, we talked about it before the Creighton game, and I remember I had my studio downstairs. I got everything back up into my studio now. I'm sitting downstairs, and I said, if there's one team who K-State can beat, who I think can figure it out, it's Creighton and Doug McDermott. And look what they're doing. And if you're a K-State fan, that's why I'm wearing the Creighton colors tonight. Root for the Blue Jays, because that's going to be a really important team for K-State the rest of the way. But let's make no mistake about it. None of this matters if K-State plays bad, right? Like none of it matters if K-State plays bad. And Gilbert, I'm really excited for January, because I made a comment on one of your posts on Wabash that said there's a 8-game stretch, right? The first there's an 8-game stretch in conference play that's like, okay, K-State can make some hay here. And so 5-3, 6-2, you'll be looking you'll be sitting pretty good in that little 8-game stretch in the beginning of conference play. But I mean, again, take care of business against Louisiana Monroe on Saturday. You're 9-4 going into conference play, and let's go, because I think that there's some winnable basketball games in the month of January.
Our man Clint Stewart's going to be on the call on Sunday against Monroe. Be sure to tune in on the broadcast, but tune into the the Clint Stewart show. Not the shoot around. I'm going to keep saying that for years. Shoot. Yeah, I got to cover my mouth. It's right. We can get another picture. You mentioned Creighton. That's the team that you want to root for. Now, if Mississippi State gets hot, all right, great. If Tulsa and Cal can keep this up, by all means. But playing in the Big East, that's really the one team that I think that one now. I can't believe I'm saying this after the way that Creighton's, the spot that the Blue Jays were in a couple weeks ago, but that's one that can matter on Selection Sunday.
Well, particularly if, they go into the Big East and are fairly competitive and start picking up wins. It just by nature, Kansas State and Creighton's strength of schedule are going to rise. Kansas State's in particular being in the Big 12. This conference is stupid. I mean, half of it is clearly NCAA tournament, and then there's more. So, they just they got to go take care of business now. They got to beat some teams, and they can't be stumbling over teams that they should be beating. But that's the problem. This team is capable of beating anyone in this conference, and on the next night lose to anyone in this conference. This is the most volatile up and down team I've ever covered at Kansas State.
Did you not cover last season's team? Come on,
dude. That team was bad. They found a way to be good briefly, but this team is mystifying because it's both in the Creighton game. It was both incredible and bad, and then a little bit incredible at the end of the one. I mean, I've never seen a team quite like this, and they've got to calm that down and find a better steady hum here where they're playing more consistently. But that comes when you start playing this stuff called defense. If you play defense, you're going to be more consistent. I know.
forgot they played that. Really interesting. Monty, you're the football guy, but I'm sure you tune into the basketball games. What do you see?
Yeah, I watched a little basketball. There at times I'm frustrated with them, and there are times where like, man, we got some dudes that can play. And any given night, one or two guys can get hot. But honestly, that Creighton game, I watched that and thinking to myself, we're a better team than I thought we were.
Yeah.
After that, I'm like, because initially we kind of struggled at times, but then playing on the road in a packed house against a good Creighton team. It gave me hope, and I got excited. And actually, at the end of the game, I got online and looked at our schedule, and I saw we open up with BYU, Big 12. And I'm like, my goodness. Thankfully, we have them here in Manhattan. And then I saw a couple of games later, we play Arizona at Arizona. Mm-hmm. So, yeah.
Good luck.
Myself, I'm glad we got that Creighton win because they could be hard to come by moving forward in the first 8 games. And UCF is not world beaters, but they're going to be competitive. And sometimes, and then we have KU at home a little bit later, which is nice. But there are a few games we could win, but one game at a time. But we definitely got the talent, and I feel like we have the depth to make a run and do some good things. I'm not saying we're going to win the Big 12, but we can definitely put ourselves in a position to get into the NCAA tournament and do some damage. But obviously, we got to play a little bit better defense and be more consistent on offense. But we got dudes that can play.
David Castillo coming off the bench, that right then and there gives you at least solid depth in the Big 12. And I hope he plays a lot. And now if he's more comfortable coming off the bench, then give him 39 minutes and 58 seconds a game. I'll be happy. But it's going to come down to be honest, guys, your Doreen Buka's on the roster. Can CJ Jones evolve a little bit more offensively? Because we've seen what Haggerty and Johnson and Bashir can do, and you add Castillo into that mix. That's a really, really, really good backcourt. And you go to the front court, right? McGriff. I think that's where the season might be, made or broken. Can Kansas State maybe mask some of those deficiencies? And the defense is going to be a conversation all year long, I fear. But if you score more points than your opponent, I guess it doesn't matter. I guess glass half full.
Can we talk about South Dakota? I was watching that game and the football game at the same time. But who wins? Mississippi Valley State or South Dakota, Ryan Gilbert?
Oh, man. Mississippi Valley State is a whole nother level of bleh, respectfully. South Dakota offensively, believe it or not, is not a bad, we didn't see it in Manhattan, but that's a team that the numbers, I think they're top 100 in the nation in scoring. The defense is where it was awful. Kansas State only had, I think, 28 transition points. It felt like a million in that game on Saturday, but South Dakota, that's not one that's going to go far. And, Mississippi Valley State, that's another one that's not going to mean anything. But like we said earlier, keep rooting for Tulsa, keep rooting for Cal, keep rooting for Creighton. And even the games against Nebraska and Indiana, I know that there's no shame in losing those. Seton Hall, the only real one that you truly wish you could go back and do over would be Bowling Green. But, guys, I'm not a believer of just change this. Like who said earlier with Creighton, does that Blue Jays team go out and play the way it does against Marquette and Xavier? Probably not. So to get to where Kansas State is right now at this point, it includes a Bowling Green loss, and that's just a fact of the matter. Got to live with that.
Yep. I'm with you. The last thing I'll say, guys, I know we're getting ready to wrap up. I look at where this K-State basketball team is right now, and if you would have told me 2 weeks ago that they'd be in this spot, I probably wouldn't believe you. I didn't think they were going to beat Creighton. But being 8-4 versus 7-5 with essentially no good wins, it's way different. And right, even after they beat Creighton, you look at that game, you're like, okay, well, is Creighton very good? I think it kind of validates what they did, and they look better, man. Like the eye test, just you watch them play. This is the team that I saw in Kansas City. This is the team I saw play Mississippi State and throttle them, and this is the team I saw that should have beat Nebraska. The team that lost 4 games, I don't know what happened. Right, I have no idea how they lost those 4 games. The team that I'm watching right now is the team I saw from the beginning part of the year. And if that's the team, if that's who they actually are, then I do believe that this is an NCAA tournament team.
And regardless of what happens, guys, this is the group of guys that you would want to bank on to play well and make a run. Now, not going to have to worry about a player moaning and complaining about a fan and their messages on social media, things of that nature. These guys are locked in, and David Castillo's in the gym at 5 a.m. every morning. And, we've touched on this. Abdi Bashir checks himself out of a game because he wants his guys to stay in. And this is the group. So I'm not saying that this is the best team in the Big 12, but when you're together, when you're playing for each other, that can get you to stay competitive in most games. Fitz, you want to wrap it up? You want to press the off button? Boss?
I can do that, but this team is really likable. Gills, you work with them more than I do, but these are really likable players. Last year, not so much. You could kind of tell there was personal agendas. The only agenda this group has is winning. Yep. And they want to win with each other. And that's a really good sign, and it's a hopeful sign.
Again, to get to where you are now, right? Yeah, last year sucked. The year before that, K-State missed the NCAA tournament. Jerome Tang and his staff, they had to learn their lessons somehow to get the right players. And you go through those frustrations of, the leaders of last year's team. Well, you learn lessons. Now you've got these, ambassadors for the program that are really, Fitz, you said it, really likable.
Yep.
I'll finish on what Fitz said. The couple of games I've been to in person and the ones I watch on TV, I will tell you right away, I've noticed that the guys appear to enjoy each other and appear to like each other. And they play, and they're having fun when they're playing. Compared to last year, teams like night and day. And a lot of guys felt like they had their own personal agenda last year, and they seem like more of a team this year. So hopefully that plays a big part of them going further than they did last year. But yeah, they look like they're having fun, and they actually care about each other and want to be here in Manhattan.
Very true. Gil, is that it?
Yeah. Make sure you sneak in a comment about how much you hate Ryan Gilbert.
I love Ryan Gilbert. He's a fantastic. Well, hold on. Let me seriously think about something nice to say about Ryan Gilbert. I do.
Thank you for watching the K-State Insiders. This has been a GoPowerCat.com and Spirit Street production.